On this episode of the Fieldhouse Files, Mel Raines, the president and chief operating officer of Pacer Sports and Entertainment. She makes her first appearance on the podcast. We discuss the over $360 million spent on upgrades to and around the Fieldhouse, what the new setup is like, and what you can expect. And welcome into the Fieldhouse Files, the podcast where I take you behind the scenes with the Pacers, talk to individuals on and around the team, and tell you what you need to know. Well, today, October 4th, is a notable one for those over at 125 South Pennsylvania Street. It marks 500 days until Indianapolis hosts the 2024 NBA All-Star Game. Long overdue. It's been, 30 years or so here. And more than that, it was supposed to go down in 2021, but yeah, thanks pandemic. Anyways, on Monday, a press conference was held inside the newly renovated, again, Gainbridge Fieldhouse with so many chairs, the mayor, CEO, Rick Fuson, and many others. For me, it was great to see Tamika Catchings back around again. She's serving as a co-chair for Indy's All-Star Game, by the way. My guest this week on the podcast is Mel Raines, and things don't let up for her anytime soon. Just as building construction is completed in the coming months, there's the Bicentennial Unity Plaza outside, just north, plus a new entertainment site just northeast as well. Oh, by the way, she's the president of the host committee for that All-Star Game I was referencing coming up next season. But before our conversation, a few things about Pacers training camp over the last week. We're now 7 practices in, and for me, the most notable thing has been that they've all been closed entirely to the media. That's the case for the first time in my 11 seasons covering the team. We haven't seen one play, one scrimmage, drills, stations, anything like that. Only have been able to see players shooting on their own and shooting drills after practice. It's noteworthy for sure that that's kind of the change here. Not exactly sure why. A lot of youth, the young players trying to maybe perhaps keep the focus there, keep it more private. Certainly that's become the trend in sports world as a whole. The negative side is it provides less insight on this current roster. We have to lean more on what we're told and those others that I've talked to. A couple main players that stick out, and this goes beyond a couple of the obvious, like a Tyrese Halliburton. The two names, Andrew Nembhard and Terry Taylor. Guys can't shut up about these two, about the way they're playing, their toughness, how much they have improved, and what you might see out of those two this year. Nembhard, first pick in the second round this year. Terry Taylor, undrafted last year, and now back with the Pacers for year 2. And I know Rick Carlisle and others, big believer in his and what he can provide and will continue to provide for the team in this kind of positionless basketball. What is he? That's kind of the running joke because no one is exactly sure. Plays more like a center, but agile like a forward, can defend any position. Look for those two. I've also been really impressed with, from what I have seen, the shooting Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Aaron Nesmith. Those three have really shot it well from outside when they're going around the world, trying to hit 5 shots in each of the 5 spots around the arc. If they hit at least 20 of 25, they go ring that bell. Those guys I can almost count on writing down on my notes every single day. So Halliburton, Hield, and Nesmith. Very curious what we see from him. He'll be running with the second unit. The starters thus far have looked like Halliburton, Chris Duarte, Buddy Hield, Jalen Smith, and Miles Turner. 3 are known. The Duarte, Buddy Hield were less so. There was some thought maybe that's Benedict Mathurin. I think they're going to make him earn it, and eventually he will be a starter, but it doesn't feel like it from the outset, at least to begin these preseason games. And TJ McConnell running that second unit. So that will be interesting to see as well. Good to see him back from injury after, remember, he missed most of last season with that wrist injury to his shooting hand, which makes that all the more difficult for certain. Staying with positive things, it's been notable, too, that there really hasn't been any significant or noteworthy injuries where guys are missing time, guys go down, guys, like in the past, there have been issues in camp, to Goga, to Glenn Robinson III, Edmund Sumner even before camp. So far, almost everybody is a full go. Gogo was not for the first couple days. He is. Jalen Smith seems to be full go. David from Lithuania, they say just call him David. He was slow out of the gate just because of an ankle injury suffered at open runs here at the Pacers the week leading into camp, but he seems fine shooting when we're out there and seems to be doing more as well. I'll be really curious to see what he looks like on the court shooting the ball, because he's also shot it really well, rung the bell many different times. What to expect here from the preseason? 4 preseason games, 2 on the road, then 2 at home next week. Well, Rick Carlisle plans to take these games seriously, give guys key minutes, not just like, play Tyrese 5 minutes and then he's good. No, he wants them to experience it, play together, try to build a lot on that chemistry. And he also, though, wants to go deep on the roster, playing a lot of guys, giving them opportunity, seeing how they can contribute, seeing different combinations. His thought is with such a young team is that they can't take shortcuts, that they need to value this time. And so do not expect starters to be held to, say, 10 minutes, for example, in these preseason games. Now, hopefully they don't play 35 minutes, but it's probably 20, 25, several runs, playing in both halves, those sort of things. We want to see these different lineups and combinations. After the first few days, they've mixed them up and matched guys with different groups and seen what those combinations look like over the last 3 practices since the weekend. The 3 main things that I'm looking for: how has Tyrese improved? What kind of leadership has he taken on? What does Miles Turner look like? Remember, he hadn't played in a game since January because of that stress reaction in his foot. So what does he look like? How does he look and play with Tyrese Halliburton? And also, how is he featured, if at all, with Domantas Sabonis not here anymore? Remember, Sabonis was traded after Miles got hurt, so Miles hadn't played as the solo big either. Now, Jalen Smith will be in there. Isaiah Jackson will get a lot of opportunity. They're very high on him as well. But I'm very curious to see what Miles' attitude and performance looks like, even though, yes, it is just a preseason game. Even he was saying here today after practice that, it feels a little bit differently, and you don't take it for granted as much because he just wants to get back after it and play once again. One player you will not see as a newcomer, that's Daniel Tice. He was acquired in that deal with the Boston Celtics, essentially moving on from Malcolm Brogdon. He'll be held out at least for 1 game, probably more, after he really didn't have an offseason. He was with the Celtics through the NBA Finals, so that's into June. Then he played games as of like a couple weeks ago with Germany in Eurobasket. I think that ended like September 20th. So he's not very restful. He's been in town, 10 days. His family is just now getting here. I'll have a one-on-one conversation with him this week. It was good to talk with him and get to know him a little bit. It's a little bit of an awkward situation. That's my viewpoint, in that he really doesn't fit here. There's 3-4 centers in front of him in terms of the future. He's more of a veteran now. He's got several more years under contract. He wants a winning situation. He loved it in Boston, was stunned to be traded, would probably like to go back there. But here he is, and he's going to try to make the most of that situation in the meantime, but I wouldn't expect him to finish the season here. It wouldn't make sense for either side. And lastly, just kind of there's a sense of optimism, a sense of direction finally, I think, with this Pacers team, while there's also an understanding that things will be tough at times. There might be some ugly games, but what does the defense look like? That's all they've really focused on in training camp, and that's a good thing because it was atrocious many times last year, and especially the last couple of months last season. Yes, Miles was out. Yes, TJ McConnell was out, but there's a lot more to it, and it starts with the individual defense, guys owning their assignment, handling their guy, and not just being like, Miles is back there, I'll be good. No, it starts with individual defense, and then I'm curious just to see individual growth from so many of these players. There's just 18. They could extend it up to 20. You can bring 20 guys to camp. I like that they didn't. I think it's better that they didn't. They can focus more on their guys that really have a future here. And on top of that, if a guy gets waived elsewhere, they can pick him up. They could sign one guy to a 2-way contract. They could sign another guy to a camp deal. I think that's smart. I've been calling for that for several years, and I'm glad that's what the front office elected to do this year. So Wednesday, Pacers play at Charlotte. Get this, that's the only game between 2 NBA teams in the preseason that is not televised. There's one other game that is not scheduled to be televised. That's Maccabi Rahana. I know I botched that, but that's coming up on Thursday. The Trailblazers playing them. That's not scheduled to be on TV in Portland. In this game, not televised by the Pacers or the Hornets. So that's unfortunate. And so the next opportunity for fans to potentially see this team would be Friday as the Pacers play at the Knicks. Then they could see them in person Sunday when Fan Jam. Remember, it's free, but you need an online mobile ticket. You need to register for that beforehand. But highly suggest Fan Jam on Sunday. I've gone every year for the last decade plus. Highly recommend, especially if you got young kids and it's not worth a $60 game ticket, right? Well, here you could see these guys up close, get to know them a little bit. A lot of new names, new faces and such. See Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff. By the way, also take some time and walk around Gainbridge Fieldhouse. See the new Chick-fil-A. See the new team store that's now reopened and things like that. No Colts game on Sunday, by the way. They play Thursday at Denver, so Sunday can be devoted for a couple hours to the Pacers if you're a fan and want to check that out at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. By the way, parking, that's taken care of. That's free at the Virginia Avenue Garage. More details at fieldhousefiles.com. All right, let's get into my conversation with Mel Rain. She was promoted to president and COO last year. Just tremendous at her job. She's at every single event, busts her ass, does a great job. And the Pacers, they're very lucky to have her. Mel, thanks for joining me, first of all. And the primary thing I wanted to discuss with you here today was renovations. There's so much that's been going on with the Fieldhouse, not just this summer, this year, but the last 3 years. To start out, what's the general update on how things are going and maybe what the next month entails as we gear up for opening night?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Scott. It's nice to be on. We are wrapping up phase 3, which we've been waiting on for 3 years. And our first show is on October 2nd. We've got a big crowd coming in for Post Malone. And then, of course, Pacer season is right on the heels. So we are cleaning up the building right now in earnest and ready to have crowds back in. Our punch list, which anyone who's done a construction project knows, that's kind of the tough part, is usually several thousand items when you're doing something this big. And we expect that'll take several months to finish out. But everything is done and operational in the building except the new Kroger SkyDeck that is on the west side of the balcony. We took 7 rows off the top and are building a new double-decker SkyDeck platform that we're really excited for people to get in to see, but that will take another couple of months. We had to build an elevator for access up there, so that's that doesn't get done as quickly as I would like it to, and a few other finishing touches. So we're planning to open that toward the end of November, potentially early December, but hopefully end of November. So everything else is done and ready to go.
That's fantastic. Better than I was actually expecting, just because you hear about all the challenges right now of construction workers and labor and lumber and whatever it might take to get this all done. And I know one of the key things the first year, I think, right, was because of the pandemic. Maybe one of the blessings was it allowed you guys to get a little bit ahead. I think the video board's one of the main things that I remember there.
Yeah, we certainly had a silver lining and got a little extra time in that 2020 when the season got pushed back to December. And then what we did is we bid phase 2 and 3 back in the fall of 2020. So everyone who's worked on the project since early 2021 has been identified and knew what the materials were. So everything was ordered well in advance. So in 2021, a lot of the things were late to come and late to get installed. It was a little bit more stressful. Going into phase 3, our escalators were already here, the elevators were already here, the seats were already here. So it was really a matter, to your point, of labor. And of course, you always hit hiccups with any construction project, but this was probably the smoothest of the 3 phases. It was also the smallest scope. And so we were just able to hit the ground running really quickly in May, as soon as the Fever were done playing. And we got about a 2-week head start with having everything in and pulling out seats earlier and some other demo we were able to get done. And so we certainly had wished the Pacers would have been well into the playoffs last season, but we took advantage of the fact that they were not from a construction perspective.
What are you going to do with yourself once renovations are almost done? Has this basically taken up the majority of your time over the last 3 years?
It's taken a lot of time, but the NBA All-Star Game is on the
Mhm.
horizon, and so I'm the president of the host committee for that as well. So so the inside of the project is wrapping up. The outside, we still have to go until probably May of 23 is our projected ribbon cutting for the new Bicentennial Unity Plaza. And then we also announced late last year a new entertainment complex building we're putting on the east side of the plaza on Delaware Street. We're excited about that. So that will not finish until the end of 23. So I'm not putting my hard hat away for
My
a little
bad.
while. Still going to be in a hard hat at times. So we still have a lot of construction to do. We've got All Star starting to ramp up, which we're excited about. So I will find a way to fill all my free time.
Let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. I love all this stuff. You mentioned elevators. I assume you're referencing the three bank elevators we're all used to in the entry pavilion that have probably been there since the very beginning, 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And then the two escalators going up. Any changes with the escalators? I feel like there was maybe something there.
Yeah, in addition to the 360 million in construction, we also did 18 million in CapEx work. And that is really all the unsexy stuff that you never want to do at your own house, but you have to do. So it's the water heaters and the HVAC system was all upgraded. All the elevators and escalators are new. So we did some of them last year in the summer of 21 and the rest this year. I was actually on the three bank elevator for the first time today. It was done, but we hadn't had it on. We didn't want construction workers putting materials and things on it.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful and it is quiet and it runs so quickly. So the escalators, I have not been on, they're done and ready, but I haven't been on them yet on the sides. So all of those things too, just the bones of the building have all been upgraded as well. So it's really very much a new building that people will be coming back into this fall.
I hope that chime still exists, though, from the outside. I think that's ingrained in my head from when
Yeah,
you click in, it arrives, right? Like
it
some of those
does.
typical things that we're all used to.
Yeah.
To set fans up, because you got to realize a lot of these fans maybe have not been there since the pandemic. Maybe it's been since 2020, so they haven't seen the new video boards or the two big bars that are right behind the lower level or that entryway bar, for example. To the very basic level, we got to warn people, right? It's all about probably get those points with your credit card. It's cashless. It's all mobile ticketing. Make sure you add that maybe to your Apple Wallet or whatever, just in case internet. I think the internet's been one thing that has been upgraded as well. I know that's been a big thing for Steve Simon for sure. What else are you warning fans about as they get set to start a new year?
Sure, we're working on a preseason communication about those things. But I think every touch point, if you haven't been back since, let's say, March of 2020, when you go online, you'll see a new Gainbridge Fieldhouse website. We obviously have a new name of the Fieldhouse. We've expanded the bridge from the parking garage over into the building, so that's a faster entry point now. It used to be a bit of a pinch point when you would go through security. That's doubled in size. It's much faster. You'll notice in the entry pavilion, you may not have been in there yet, Scott, but we have all new screens in the entry pavilion that will really, I think, knock people's socks off when they see it for the first time. I'm excited for that. We have a lot of new concessions, more points of sale throughout the building, and more options. So I'm not sure if you went into our grab and go zip in markets, but we
Absolutely.
added two more on the balcony for the fans up there. So if you are just looking for a quick snack or a drink, you can really quickly get in and out of those and not stand in the longer lines for people who are looking to buy more substantive food. We're adding another Ben's pretzel, which is one of our most popular food items on the balcony. So we'll have two areas that you can get pretzels. We have a few other partners coming in. Chick-fil-A, of course, was
I
added
was
on
going to
the
mention that one. That's a
south
big
end.
favorite. I mentioned that on the radio this morning, and that was a 30-second segment.
Yeah, it's
So,
that's been very popular. And I think in general, we've been able to move points of sale and really destinations around the concourse. It used to be everything was on the east and the west sides of the building, and now we really have options north, south, east, and west to spread people out to give you different things you may want to get and different ways to stand and watch the action. So the Yingling bar on the south end of the main concourse across from Chick-fil-A, you can get a beer with meet your friend, stand and watch the game for a while, and then go back to your seat. And we have areas like that on the balcony as well and on the Creek Vault level. So we just have a lot more options for fans of every age and whatever you may want to do, whether that's a premium experience downstairs or just to be able to go up top and see the game in a completely different way. The Kroger SkyDeck has a phenomenal view. You're really almost level with the catwalk looking down. And I think if you're a student of the game, you really see the game unfold in a different way from up there.
Yeah, usually that's only photographer Matt Krieger probably crawling up there and doing the shots.
True.
No one else wants to get up there. But it kind of reminds me, like the zone the Colts have it over there. I would assume it's something kind of very similar. You see the skyline because it's on the west side of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Correct.
And that's probably for maybe your more casual fan. You go up there, you socialize, you have a couple drinks, but you're also at the game, and it's another way to probably involve more fans at those games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think fans are going to get up and move around the building a lot more than they used to because there's a lot more to see and places to see the action of the game or the show that they may be at or the event that they may be at than we ever had before. And so I think the days of sitting in your seat for 4 quarters or the entire event and leaving are probably behind us. People are going to want to get up and explore a little bit more. And I think we've created things for them to want to go see.
To that point, I'm very curious. We talk about data and analytics a ton with basketball or football and sports, but behind the scenes in business, you're seeing whether it's probably concession wait lines or the demand for a certain product. You mentioned Ben's Pretzels. I know that there's always a big line back. That would have been the northeast side, kind of by our old media seats right there. What kind of maybe data has gone into all of this and more so in consideration with more fans wanting to maybe stand around and interact and be there, but maybe not be in their seat the entire time?
Yeah, we had some fans involved in what we wanted to design back in the master planning process. We did focus groups with, what would you like to see differently? What would you like to see added? So I think we've done quantitative and qualitative. Our fans are not shy in terms of telling us what they'd like to see and what they'd like to see differently. I'm at most of our events, and so I really do try to interact and meet people at the top of the grand staircase and welcome them to the building. And we'll often get stopped and again, our fans are not shy about the good or the bad and giving us tips. But we also certainly know where we're selling things. So where are we selling the most number of things in terms of adding additional points of sale? Or maybe we need more signage. You may be in a line here, and if you just go about 20 yards down, there may not be lines. And so how do we spread that out a little bit better, advertise where people may want to, again, just a little bit farther down the concourse is another bar. You wouldn't have to wait into a line. And so some of that is the people part of it. Some of it is the signage part of it. We certainly know the times of when we get hit the most in terms of the crowd's halftime at any basketball game is always going to be the busiest. And so how can we be sure we're ready for that, whether that's in the team store or at any of our concession stands or clubs? And so we do our best to try to turn that as quickly as we can. And we know that a lot of people will arrive 10 minutes before tip-off. So how do we get them through security as quickly as we can, get their ticket scanned? Having your ticket loaded in your wallet obviously goes a little bit faster. And people, I think, have gotten more used to that at every event they're going to than they did even 2 or 3 years ago. That all goes a lot faster. So I think it's communicating in advance, and then it's responding to the data that we have. We also survey fans after every event, and so we have an analytics team on the business side, and they do a good job of keeping us informed about what they're hearing and where we may be able to improve in different areas.
One big question, this is a little selfish. When will that alleyway open up so you can go Pennsylvania to Delaware? Do we know that?
There is no alleyway anymore.
Will there be a way to walk across, let's say?
That will be May of 23.
Okay, so we got a little bit of time there.
You'll be able to walk through the entry pavilion, but not outside until the ribbon cutting. Yeah.
How about the team store? That's something I know a lot of fans are curious about. You've been able to sell online. When will they kind of take back their store?
Yep. They open Monday on October 3rd. We're excited to have them back in business. And we've added another mini store up on the balcony. So we used to have kind of stand-up stands where you couldn't touch or feel anything. We now have a shoppable store up there, which is a little bit better experience for the guests coming. And the store, it looks better than ever. I mean, we did a full renovation. It did open last year. We were able to punch list out the things that weren't all complete. And it's been really well received. I think the size of it's bigger, it's more shoppable. It feels lighter. We got rid of the big basketball that was there.
A little disappointing though.
That was hard to get down.
Yeah. I think it's probably just the traditionalist in me. I'm so used to it. But the next thing is to get a coffee shop. That's what we need. by the way?
Well, we have a new coffee cart,
Ooh,
a
okay.
Java House coffee cart. I believe TJ McConnell is a super fan of Java
He
House,
is.
so we may have a TJ McConnell special there. So we do have that coming, and one of the things we learned over time is that having a food outlet in a retail store, they don't, and a bar, that didn't all fit together quite right.
Okay.
So and I'm not sure we're going to bring that back into the team store anytime soon. But when we get the entertainment center built, we will have a speakeasy, a restaurant, full service restaurant, and an entertainment space for events, weddings, and business meetings and things, also right on the property. And we'll have food and beverage out on the plaza. So we'll have lots of options, even when we don't have a ticketed event around the building.
Another big thing inside, for one, the event level, this was a couple of years ago, but this is kind of the back end a lot of people don't see, but the rooms where performers and all that stuff was upgraded. I think one of the biggest and important things was rearranging where the Fever was, because you were able to maximize that space, their practice court right there on the northeast corner, and give access from the street, so when maybe there's a speaker in town or people can access the court or whatever. How much have you been able to realize that space? And then along the same lines, it feels like those bars that you guys added on the event level, those have been a big hit.
Yeah, so we didn't really have much of a square footage add to the project other than moving the practice court up. That was about 7,000 square feet. Other than that, we were really dealing with the footprint of the building that we had. And that was a game changer when the architects, we looked into that with the architects, being able to move that up enabled us, and moving the Fever locker room to the old practice court site. All we had to do was move the floor up and paint the ceiling and change the lights. We used the same baskets, even just took them out and reinstalled them. And that square footage gain allowed us to put the two sideline clubs in, and moving the Star compound where the shows typically occupy the space to behind the stage, which is better for them. It's right off the loading dock, and then they go right onto the stage. The shows raved about that last year.
Good.
So that's just another great way for us to sell the building, is the convenience of in and out. And it's a very high end, nice space that worked really well. So everything on the event level changed locations except the Pacers locker room and what we call the central plant next to media dining. You may have seen the door propped open. It's sort of like the little room in your house with your heater and hot water heater and all those is, on steroids in our building. And if you were going to move that, you should just build a new building. So we upgraded the things in that. We didn't change that, but everything else, the locker rooms were upgraded and changed. The officials locker room was moved to a new location. Sideline clubs, as you mentioned, media dining was upgraded. Hopefully you like the ice cream machine. That was well received last year by the media.
We all appreciated that, yes.
Yeah, so we really tried to think of not just our guests coming and sitting in the general fan set, but what is our artist experience? What is the media experience? What is the experience of everyone coming? We did a holistic look at the renovation, because this doesn't happen every 5 years. This is a every 20 to 25 year renovation.
And the amazing thing about it is you're able to keep the integrity of the building, and people are going to get in there and think it's a brand new building, and yet it's been around since like November 1999. So it's been a little bit. Let's go outside, because I think a lot of intrigue about what is going to be out there. Is the plan still for eventually the winter to be kind of an ice skating rink, and the summer be a basketball court, but along the same lines, kind of an area for people to gather, hang out, maybe an outdoor space for people downtown to have their lunch even?
Absolutely. So the goal for Bicentennial Unity Plaza is really for it to be a community asset that is used all the time for a variety of events, and really to bring our community together. And I envision we will absolutely have ice skating.
Okay.
We're opening in May, so it'll be a few months before we can do that. We're looking into roller skating for the summer. I know that's become super popular in a lot of places, and we're looking into how to do that. But I anticipate sunrise yoga and concerts, and that more of a happy hour type concert, maybe with a singer who also plays an instrument, and everything from maybe the PAL League playing some basketball games on the plaza to a farmer's market. I mean, it's really flexible space. And so we hope to activate it as much as possible. The public art that we're adding there, that will be the last things that are installed. One is a sculpture called Together, and the other is called the Sphere that will have LEDs. You can walk into it and we'll be able to tell the story of the history of Indianapolis along with any other number of things. If it's FFA week, we may have FFA videos in there. We will certainly have Pacer and Fever and other things about what we're doing in our building. But I just think what we hope when that plaza is done, that if you come to Indianapolis and you think, what do I have to do when I go to Indianapolis? What are the top 5 things? And I think people will always think of IMS and they will always think of shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to add Bicentennial Unity Plaza to that list. Like, I haven't been to Indianapolis if I haven't been there, if I haven't seen Together and the Sphere and the Plaza, and hopefully come to an event inside as well if we have one when they're in town. But we really want that to be the destination in downtown.
Yeah, and I can even picture it kind of being an extension or the focal point off Georgia Street as well, which has been outdoors where there's been concerts. And I know you were part of that Super Bowl host committee and really established that as a place to hold things, which is excellent. And then the last thing, kind of the Speakeasy, I think this is more towards what Herb Simon is wanting over there. Can you kind of speak to what went into that decision? And again, when fans can maybe expect that to be completed?
We had always sort of thought the east side of the plaza might be able to hold some sort of restaurant or entertainment building. And so as we were redesigning the building and the plaza, kept that in mind in terms of what went where and the thought of that. And then as we were looking into things last fall and digging into it a little bit more with Herb, we had some options and we talked about it, and he really wanted to add that. We think it adds a lot to the plaza to have that amenity right there. And so he green lighted it, and we've been working on it ever since. And the goal is to have that done by the All-Star game. So my sense is construction will wrap up at the end of 2023. And then we will, have January to kick the tires on it and be open by February. And I think it'll be pretty busy during All-Star weekend is my guess, but I think it's going to be busy all the time. We'll be partnering with a restaurant partner that will be announced sometime in 2023. And we're excited about that. And I think it's just another amenity in downtown. A rising tide lifts all boats down here. And the more things we have for people to come to enjoy, I think the better. And this is going to be a great asset.
And then it really makes Washington Street to South Street right there. That's kind of your big, it's not a block, whatever it is, an incredible
corridor
district, if you will. And we've seen that, especially even if you go up to Milwaukee, for example, what they've really been able to do. So I kind of see shades of that that you guys at the Pacers are able to do. Do want to get into your story a little bit. Starting out, you're an IU grad like myself, but then getting into politics, then to sports. What kind of led to that transition? And also, where do you benefit now in your current role from that previous life?
It was a bit accidental, to be honest. I grew up in South Bend, went to IU, wound up in DC a little bit on a fluke, working for Senator Dan Coates. Didn't study political science, but fell into it and really enjoyed it. I started out giving tours of the Capitol, and I now give tours of the Fieldhouse. I'm a pretty good tour guide. I think I come by it naturally after 30 years. But in 2009, I had been working in the White House, and when President Obama won, I no longer had a job in the White House. And so I was doing some political consulting. I knew we had won the bid to host the Super Bowl, and I was interested in that and applied for the job. And I think out of about 140 applicants, from what I understand, I made the interview round, did a phone interview, and flew out and met with Allison Millington. And she had a HR committee I interviewed with, Caroline Mays, and got the job. I mean, I feel like very grateful that happened. And I was given the opportunity to move back. And through that job, I was able to connect with sort of everyone in town quickly. Everyone was involved in the Super Bowl. I started in the fall of 2009 and met Rick Fuson through the planning of the Super Bowl. And after the Super Bowl, I went back to politics to be Susan Brooks' chief of staff for 2 years. It was her freshman term, and I'd met her during planning the Super Bowl, and she became a good friend, and that was a great opportunity for her and me. But I knew I wanted to be back in Indy, and I hadn't found the right thing. And so right at her re-election, Rick reached out and said, "Do you want to meet? I've got a potential opportunity for you." And we met, and he offered me the original job I had here to run the facilities. And I said, "I've never done that before, you know it." And he said, "I think you've got everything it takes to do that." So I took a leap of faith. He took a leap of faith. And I think it's 2 promotions later and 8 years later, I think it's worked out for both of us. But it was a bit of a fluke when young students ask, you have my dream job. Can I meet with you and hear your path? I say, you don't want to take my path. You want to go about this a little more directly. But I never thought I would be doing what I do with an NBA team, but I love it. And Herb and Steve Simon and Rick and Jim Morris have all just been incredibly gracious to give me the opportunity. There's a lot about it that feels familiar to politics. When you work for an elected official, you work for their family. And so the part where ultimately we're a small family business, and the Simon family is a great family to work for, feels similar to working for Senator Coates or Susan Brooks or even Vice President Cheney. All that part's comfortable. I certainly have had to learn a lot about the business, but it's been great. And the renovation is just a passion project for me. It's such a great building, and I think we kept the spirit of it and we just made it better. That kept me up at night. I didn't want people to say you ruined this iconic building. I think we just added to this iconic building.
Yeah, and modernized it and really glamorized it up in a good way. I think that's fantastic. It's funny to think $360 million in renovations, and what was it, like 181, I think, something like that to start, but that's going to happen 23 years later.
Yeah,
but
I would hate to think if we were bidding it now with inflation and construction, what that number would be. Thankfully, this was all bid and paid for before that really happened, because this could be significantly more than that if we had, at the timing hadn't been what it was.
That's a really good point. So you got your start here with operations facilities. Basically, if there was an event, you were running it. And now kind of doing a little bit of everything, I presume, as president, COO, and making sure things just run smoothly.
Yeah, so it's all of those things plus our HR functions, our IT functions, corporate communications. So not the team communications piece, but all of our corporate communications, our community engagement initiatives, and then trying to look holistically across the enterprise at company-wide things with Todd Taylor, who's our president and chief commercial officer. So we're sort of in tandem trying to make sure we're how do we keep and retain talent, and how do we, things that you think of from a broader business perspective. We try to do a lot of that together, make recommendations to Rick and Herb in terms of, just direction for the general business.
Well, from the outside, it seems like you've been crushing it. I always talk about, when they talk about power women, I think of Allison Millington. I'm glad you mentioned her. Yourself, Susan Boffman is another one I know kind of well. And so I think you three are tremendous representations of Indianapolis and successful in your own right. So thanks for finally making your podcast debut, and I appreciate it. And you'll be seeing too much of me here in the coming days.
Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity.